Hello everybody and welcome back to another Blender Made Easy tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a low poly interior scene. So let's get started with this cube. We're first going to move the origin point to the bottom of the cube. That will just make things a little bit easier. Now to do that we need to be in edit mode. So press tab to go into edit mode, then press G, Z. Holding the command or the control key you can snap the origin point to the bottom by just moving the cube up. There we go. Now, the dimensions of this room, we're going to press the N key and set them up here. So the X, and that is the red line, we're going to be setting this to a value of 3. And then the Y, we're going to set this a little bit higher. We're going to go 3.5. And then the Z, we can bring up to 2.4. I think that's perfectly fine. And there we go. Now, to get into this interior scene, we need to delete this vertice. So you can right click on that by going into edit mode, right click on that, press the X key and delete it. And there we go. Now we have our room and we can start filling it up with different models. The first thing that we're going to do though is cut out a window. So go into edit mode, hit Control R and add a loop cut, 2 loop cuts actually, using the scroll wheel, drag it up once, add a loop cut there, then right click. Then add another loop cut up here, scroll wheel up to bring in 2, left click, then right click. Now let's go into front view and position the window where we want it to be. So go front view by pressing 1 on the number pad, then 5. Now this window, I want to scale it up a little bit, so I'm going to box select it by pressing B, drag a box, scale it up just a little bit, drag it up, probably around here will be good. A little bit more. All right, let's delete this now by pressing X and go faces, and that will delete the face that's right there. Perfect. Then hold the shift key and right click on both of these vertices and press shift S, cursor to selected. Now that we have our cursor there, anything we add will be placed in that window. Now we're going to enable an add-on, and that is the Archimesh add-on, and this add-on is great. So go up to File, User Preferences, Add-ons, then in the search bar just type in Arc and you should see Add Mesh Archimesh. Check that box and then exit. Now if we press Shift A and go under Mesh, Archimesh, we can see all of these different presets that we can add. And this helps quite a bit when creating architecture. Even though this is low poly, the window still works perfectly fine because it does look low poly. So we're going to go with rail window right here, and there we can see our window. Now if we press the N key, if it's not already open, if we scroll down to the properties down here, we can start changing the settings of the window. So let's go into front view to make sure it's in the right dimensions, and it looks like we need to bring it down just a little bit. So I think, is it this one? Nope. Okay, so this is the side. Let's drag that in just a tad. There we go, so it fits the edges. And I think this one is the height. Yes, it is, so make sure that's down just a little bit. Let's go 0.95. There we go, and you can see it clips up there. Perfect. And you can mess with all the other settings like this. This is the size of it. Here we go, we can move that up and down, the rotation. If you have a window on this side, you can rotate it by using the rotation. And then down here, the sill. You can turn that off and that will get rid of the sill, I think. Yeah, there we go. It gets rid of that little bar right there. I'll leave that on for now, which is fine. And then you can add blinds if you want to. So if you click on that, you can add blinds and then mess with the settings here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it open. And then create default cycle materials. You want to make sure that is turned on and make sure you're in cycles when you add this, because that will automatically create a material for us with the right colors, and then the glass is the right shading and everything like that. So if we right click on the window itself, we can see the different materials, and if we press Shift Z, we can see right through it. Perfect. There we go. So now that we've added the window, we can start adding the rest of the scene. So let's first work on the desk over here. So we'll go to a new layer by pressing 2. I'm going to press N and T to close off both of those panels so we have a little bit more room. Then I'm going to press Shift C to snap my cursor to the center. All right, so let's add in a cube. So press Shift A, go to Cube, and then go into Top View. Then go over to the modifier section, click Add Modifier, and Mirror. Make sure X and Y is turned on, then go into Edit Mode and move it to the right. There we go. We're going to scale this down, move it a little closer, scale it down, and this is going to be the legs of the desk. And I added a mirror modifier just to save us a little bit of time. So if I press SZ, we can scale up the legs, probably around that height will be good. Go into front view and then just drag it up. Move it to the right, or to the left, I mean, just a little bit. Next, add in another cube, so press Shift A, go to Mesh, and then Cube. Scale up the cube, and then scale it along the Z by pressing S, Z, and scale it down to the width or the height of a desk. So probably around that size, like a table I think would be that size. And then make sure it's small too, so press S, Y, scale it in. And there we go, we have ourselves a nice small desk. Here we can add a computer monitor, and this is pretty easy. All we have to do is just add in another cube, drag it up, scale it down a little bit, then place it right on top of the table, probably around here. Drag it backwards. Okay, so for this, we're going to scale it along the Z, so go into front view, S, Z, scale it down a little bit, S, Y, scale it in, make sure it's on the table, then go into edit mode. I'm going to press Z to go into wireframe, and this will just help us see everything a little bit better. A to deselect and B for box select, and draw a box around that face. Then we're going to press E to extrude, right click, and scale it inwards. Then E to extrude one more time. This time we're going to scale along the Y, so press S, Y, and make it a little bit thinner. Then drag it back. All right. Next, E to extrude, right click, then press S, X, and scale it out. And if you want a really big monitor, you can go really small, but I'm probably going to go around that width or so. Then press E to extrude, and we'll drag it up. Maybe a little bit lower. There we go, not too bad. Then go into edit mode, and we're going to indent the screen just a little bit. So right click on that screen, make sure you're in face select mode, I to inset, and drag it in just a little bit. And since this is longer on the X than it is at the Z, it makes the X go in a little bit further. So to make it even, we have to press S, Z, and just scale it down along the Z axis just to make sure that each of these sides are even. Then press E to extrude and just drag it backwards just a tiny bit into the mesh. And there we go, we have our computer screen. Now the keyboard, that's pretty easy as well. I'm just going to place my cursor right on top, press Shift A, add in a plane, scale it down a little bit, then press S, X, scale it along the X till about the size of a keyboard. Then go into edit mode, and we're going to subdivide this a bunch of times. So hit Control R, add in a bunch of loop cuts, probably around here. You can, if you want to, like figure out the amount of buttons that are on a keyboard, but I'm not going to do that since it's going to be pretty far away from the camera. I'm going to add in a couple more here. Then press A once or twice to select everything. Go into face select mode. Hit the I key twice, and that will just inset all of the faces right about there. Now since this is rectangle, we need to scale it along the Y as well to make the buttons even. So press S, Y, and it should actually make sure you're on individual origins. And this will scale each face individually instead of the entire thing. So now if we press S, Y, you can see that the faces are scaling individually. So make this a square face, then press E to extrude right about there. There we go, we have our buttons, look at that. And we can just drag this up a tiny bit, go into edit mode, select the bottom half by going into front view, A to deselect, B for box select, and drag a box around the bottom, and then just extrude it down. There we go. Let's press Shift Z, make sure that looks good. Not too bad. And maybe scale it up just a tiny bit. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can place this in our scene. So I'm going to hit the Shift 1 key and then go into top view. Currently the desk is huge, so make sure you select it and then press R. Hold on, make sure you're back on medium point. Rotate it Holding the command key, I'm going to snap it to 90 degrees, then scale it down. You can just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just imagine the size of the room and then how big a computer desk would be. Probably around that size. Then drag it down and then to the wall on the left. Maybe this way a little bit. All right, not too bad. Let's go into front view and drag it up because I think it's just a little small and a little short. So probably around there is good. If we add more things into the scene, we'll be able to see the scale a little bit better. So now let's work on the bed over on this side. So go to layer 3, Shift C to snap my cursor to the center. Then press Shift A and add in a cube. Then we're going to scale it down a little bit, scale on the Z, make it smaller, and then scale along the Y. So press S, Y, and make it the size of a bed, probably a twin bed, I think will be good, about that size, a little bit lower, right there. Now I want to add a headrest over on the side, so go into edit mode, hit Control R, add a loop cut, and drag it to the right. Then go into face select mode, right click on this face, and extrude it upwards. So press E to extrude, and just drag it a little higher, probably around there I think will be good. Next, we're going to add in another cube. Actually, we can delete that. We'll just Shift D this face. So right click on this face, Shift D it, then press P and go selection. So now we have two different objects right here. With this face selected, I'm going to scale it down a little bit and go into edit mode, A to select it, and then extrude it upwards. Probably around the same height as the bed frame itself. I think that'll be good. And then just drag it over to the right till it touches that headboard. All right. Now to make this look like a bed, we're going to be adding in a bevel modifier. So go to modifier and then bevel. Hit Control A and apply the scale, and that will just tell Blender the width and the dimensions. Then make the width a lot smaller, probably around a 0.046. Then the segments we can turn up to 3. There we go. Now that has some bevel, it does look a little bit softer, which is good. Next, I'm going to add in a pillow. Now to do this, we'll be adding in another cube, scaling the cube down and dragging it upwards. Scale it down a little bit more. Then press S, Z, scale it like this, S, X, and scale it out. Now to make it look like a pillow, we're going to be adding in a loop cut in the middle and then a loop cut on the side. So press Control R, add in a loop cut there. Next, select all of these edges right there. Then press S and we can scale them out. Perfect. And then scale them downwards by pressing S, Z. Like that, not too bad. Then go into edit mode, right click on this vertex and just drag it up just a tad. Now let's position that on the bed. So go to side view by pressing 3 and then move it over right there. Then press Shift D, we'll move it here, scale it down a little bit, rotate it, and then place it on top of, or on the side of that other pillow. There we go, look at that. Pretty cool. Let's bring it into our scene and set it to scale. So press Shift 1 and Shift 2 to bring back the computer desk. Go into top view and then select it by pressing Z, box selecting it, make sure you're not selecting that empty, scale it down, and then place it in this corner. We'll zoom in here, place it right about there. Not too bad, drag it up a little bit, maybe scale it up a little. And there we go. I think that looks pretty good. We're going to be modeling in one more thing and then I'll let you do the rest. And that is going to be the computer desk. So let's go to a new layer, layer 4. So we'll click on layer 4, Shift C to make sure my cursor is at the center. Then Shift A and we'll be adding in a cube. Scale this cube down and then scale it along the Z's to press S, Z and scale it down. Then go into edit mode. Hit Control R and add a loop cut right here and drag it backwards. Then go into face select mode, right click on this face and extrude it upwards. There we go, so we've got our chair. And then drag this face along the Y so it's at an angle. All right. Now for the legs, we're going to be adding in a cylinder. So press Shift A, go to cylinder, scale the cylinder down, and then place it underneath. Scale it down a little bit more, Then go into edit mode. Actually, I'm going to drag it up into the chair, then go into edit mode. Right click on this face and drag it downwards. Then press E, right click and scale out. Then drag it down a little bit more. Then press E once again. There we go. Now next I'm going to Alt right click on that loop right there, and that will select the entire face. Then go to select, checker, deselect. There we go. Then go into top view. Currently this is too many legs, so I'm going to just deselect every other one. So just like this, deselecting every other face right there. So now we only have 8 legs. Then press E to extrude, right click, S, Shift Z, and that will scale them all out. Probably around that width or so. Then make sure this is set to individual origins, and then press S again, and that will scale them downwards. Then we can also drag them down as well. There we go, not too bad. Next, we're going to press Shift A and add in a, where's it at? Add in a cylinder again. Go into side view and then rotate this. Scale it down and scale it along the Y as well to make it a little bit thinner. Scale it down. Then go into top view once again. We're going to be placing this on each of the legs, so scale it down a little bit more, then G and place it right here, and then rotate it till it's the right in the right position. There we go. Then drag it down. Oh, hold on. Drag it down until it's underneath the leg, right about there. Looks pretty good. Now to add in the rest of them, because we want to make sure each of these legs has a wheel, you could just Shift D this, rotate it around, but that's going to get a little bit annoying. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to press Shift A and add in a empty. Scale this empty down, and then press Control A and apply the scale. Make sure you apply the scale for this one as well. Control A, scale. Next, click Add Modifier, Array, turn off Relative Offset and turn on Object Offset, and select that empty. So click in this drop-down menu, type in the word empty, and it should pop up. Once you click that, we can see where it's at. Now we want to make sure the origin point of both of these are in the same position. So right click on your empty, Shift S, cursor to selected, then press Control Shift Alt C and go cursor or origin to 3D cursor. It looks like I didn't set the origin point, so I'm going to do that one more time. Make sure your cursor is at the center of this empty. Right click on your wheel, Control Shift Alt C, origin to 3D cursor. There we go. Now if we go into top view and right click on the empty and rotate it, you'll notice that it's rotating the wheel. So once we go in the position, all we have to do is just bring up the count and it will go all the way around. And then to fine tune it, you can just rotate it a little bit more to make sure that one at the end is centered. There we go. So that's a pretty easy, handy trick that is used for a lot of things, and that will help. All right, so now that we've done that, let's bring back the rest of our scene. And actually, hold on. The wheels are a little bit small, so I'm going to scale down the chair itself, and I think that will look a little bit better. SX, scale it out. All right, that's a little bit better. Now let's bring back the rest of the scene. Go into top view, Z for wireframe, and then box select this. So I'll just box select it. Make sure this is set to medium point. R to rotate, scale it down, and then place it underneath the desk. Scale it down a little bit more. All right, scale it up. Make sure it's the right scale. Think that's pretty good. Then go into front view and make sure it's on the ground. So we'll zoom in here. Yep, it's on the ground and it looks good. To add a little bit of detail, you could select it and then rotate it around. So make sure the chair is only selected. So maybe rotate it this way and that will just give it some interest. Not too bad. Okay, so now that we've modeled in the difficult things, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to be adding in a small cabinet over here and then a cabinet over here as well, maybe a shelf on this side, and then we'll resume and we'll do the materials. Okay, now that I've added in a couple more things, you can see that I added in a shelf, and then I just added a icosphere just to give it some detail. Maybe it's like a decoration of some kind. Over here, I added in like a bedside drawer or table, a trash can right here, and then another drawer on this side. We're going to be placing the camera probably around this angle. So let's do that real quick. So we'll position our 3D view right here, Control-Alt-0 to snap the camera into place. Right click on it, G, middle mouse button, and just drag it backwards. Probably around here will be good. All right, so the next thing that we'll be doing is adding in some canvases on these sides. So to do this, we're going to be enabling another add-on. So go up to File, User Preferences, type in the word Images, and you should see an Images as Planes add-on. Make sure that's selected, then exit. Then press Shift-A, we'll add in a mesh and then images as planes. Now the image that we'll be adding is a low poly log cabin, and this is actually a tutorial that I did on this channel. So if you're wanting to create this one, you can go ahead and do that tutorial and then use that render. So I'll be using this one right here and click Import Images as Planes. And this will automatically give the plane a texture and it's the right size and everything. Alright, so let's scale this down and then place it over above the computer. So press 7, then move it right here. Scale it up just a little bit, then go into edit mode. We're going to extrude this back, so press E to extrude and just drag it back a little bit. Let's press Shift Z and make sure it looks good. Yes, it does. Next, go into edit mode, make sure everything is selected, then press Control N, and that will fix the normals. So now if we press Shift Z, we can see it looks a little bit better. Let's drag this back into the wall and then make sure it's centered above the screen. So press 3, and it looks like we need to move it to the left just a little bit and then maybe down. Perfect, so let's go into camera view again and see how our scene is looking. I'm gonna press Shift Z. Not too bad. Okay, so another thing that I want to add is a lamp on this table and then some like trash or some paper that has been thrown into the garbage. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift A, add in an icosphere, then press T and set the subdivisions to 1. Then press T to close it off and scale it down. Now to make it look like a crumbled up piece of paper, I can just select the vertices, move them around, make it look a little bit random. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then place it right in there. I'm going to press the period key to zoom in on it and make sure it's centered in the trash can. Let's go into camera view, make sure we can actually see it. There we go. Then I'm going to press Shift D, move it here, move it along the X, and then drag it along the Y, and then just do it a couple more times. So select it, move it this way, Shift D, move it along the Y, scale it down a little bit, give it some more randomness. Something like that, and make sure they're on the ground, they're not floating, which they are. Perfect. Now if we press Shift Z, we can see like that. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is model in the lamp over here. So we'll go to a new layer. Let's actually move layer 2 to layer or layer 3 to layer 2. So press A once or twice, select everything, M and 2. We'll do the same thing for this one as well. So A, M, and 2. There we go. So now let's go to layer 3, Shift C to snap my cursor, then press Shift A, we'll add in a mesh, and then cylinder. Now I've already added in a cylinder before with the division set to 8, so make sure you press T, set the vertice count to 8, and then you'll be good to go. We'll scale this down, then press S, Z, scale it along the Z, then zoom in on it. I'm going to go into edit mode, go into face select mode, right click on this face, E to extrude, right click, and scale inwards. Then E to extrude one more time. We'll drag it up. Then press Shift D, right click, and scale outwards. So now these are two different sets of vertices. So with this one selected, I'm going to press E again, extrude it downwards, and scale it out just a tiny bit. There we go. I'm going to press A once or twice to select it, Control N, and that will fix the normals. Then select it, hit Control L, and that will select the entire thing that's connected to it, and drag it upwards. Then right click on this face, X, and delete it. I'm going to add a loop cut on this bar. So add a loop cut, drag it upwards, probably around there. Then go into face select mode, right click on every other face right here. Then press E to extrude, right click, S, Shift Z, and scale outwards. Don't worry that it's thick right now, we'll fix that. Set this to individual origins, then press S, Shift Z again, and then scale it inwards. Right there. All right, good. We'll right click on this face underneath here, X, and delete it. Looks like we need to do a little bit more modeling on this, so hit Ctrl L with that face selected, scale it outwards, then press E to extrude, right click, S, Shift Z, and scale it inwards. A once or twice, Ctrl N. Okay, I know that was a lot of shortcuts, but hopefully you figured it out, and it looks pretty good. So let's actually hold on, we'll right click on this face back here and just drag that inwards. So G, XX, no, ZZ, YY, hold on. Just drag it along the Y till it fits back in there. Perfect. Okay, so let's bring back the rest of our scene and scale this down and place it on the table. So go into top view, Z for wireframe, B for box select, draw a box, scale it down, and then place it on top. So we'll just move it here and drag it upwards, scale it down a little bit more. And there we go. Okay, let's go into camera view, see how our scene is looking so far. Not too bad. For my final scene, I did add some more detail into the scene. Like for example, I added in a coffee cup here with some books, I added a book up top, a book over here. But since this tutorial is getting a little bit long, the last thing that we'll be modeling is the door, and then we'll be focused on the materials. So go to a new layer again, Shift C to snap my cursor to the center, Shift A, and we'll add in a cube. Scale this cube down, then press SY and scale it inwards, then go into front view. Low poly scenes take quite a bit of time, and it's a lot of just repetitive work, just adding in a model, modeling it, but in the end it does look pretty cool. So with this door, we're going to press S, Z, scale it upwards, probably around that height, then go into edit mode. Hit Ctrl R and add in 2 loop cuts, scale these loop cuts down. Make sure you're in vertice select mode, press S, Z, scale it down, and then drag them up. S, Z a little bit more. Then add in another loop cut right about here, add in another loop cut right about there, 2 more loop cuts, one here, and then one at the bottom. Then add in 2 more loop cuts on top, down the middle, S, X, make sure they're a little bit thin. There we go. Now with face select mode selected, we're going to select all of these faces. Then press I to inset, right about that size. Now that we've insetted it, I'm going to scale the faces along the X-axis to make the sides even. So press S, X, and scale it inwards, right about there. Next, I'm going to drag it backwards, so press G, Y, and drag it in. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, drag it out again, and then make sure this is set to individual origins, and then scale them all inwards. There we go, not too bad, looking pretty good. Go into front view, go into edit mode, and then just select everything by going to here, selecting all the faces, then press S, X, and scale it inwards along the X just to make it a little bit thinner. There we go, I'm gonna press Shift Z, make sure it looks good. Yes, it does. All right, next we'll go to layer 1, 2, and 3. Go into top view, right click on our door, rotate it 90 degrees, and then place it on this wall. So G to move it and place it right there. Make sure it's scaled down and dragged up. Scale it up a little bit more, drag it upwards, right about there. Let's go into camera view, make sure it looks good. It's a little small, so I'll drag it up a little bit more, and right about there looks pretty good. And then make sure it's in the wall pretty good so it's not too thick. There we go. All right, let's press Shift Z, make sure everything looks good. I think it does. We could add a doorknob, and actually we'll do that right now. That's pretty easy. All we have to do is press Shift A, add in a mesh and then cylinder, rotate this along the Y by 90, enter, scale it down, zoom in a little bit, scale it down a little bit more. Go into edit mode, we'll add a loop cut right here, and then I'll go into face select mode, right click on these two faces back there, and extrude them out. And that's about it. That's all we really have to do for the doorknob. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I think we are ready to do the materials. So when creating low poly, there's not a lot of reflections. Most of the materials are diffused, so we're gonna keep that in mind while we're creating these. So the first one that we'll do is the bed right here. So go over to the material tab and click new. We're gonna name this one light blue, or blue light. Then for the color, we're going to go with a nice blue sort of color, probably around here. We'll go a little darker. There we go. Let's press Shift Z, make sure that looks good. All right. And for the pillows, we're gonna go with a darker blue. So we're gonna select blue light, hit that 2 to create a new material, and we'll call it dark blue. Then with the diffuse shader, we'll drag it upwards and then drag it down. Shift Z, make sure it looks good. Yes, it does. Select that other pillow, click on this drop down menu and select dark blue. For the wood frame, we're going to click new and set the color to a dark brown. Somewhere around here will probably be good. We'll press Shift Z, make sure that looks good. Yes, it does. And we'll call this one dark brown. The bedside table is going to have that same material, so select dark brown. The desk, this is going to be a tan color, so we'll type in the word tan and then set the color to a tan color, probably around here. We'll press Shift Z, we'll go a little darker and a little bit more orange, probably around there I think will be good. For the legs, it's just going to be a dark black material, so we'll just type in the word black. And we'll set it not all the way to black, but pretty dark, probably around that. All right, we'll press Shift Z. Looks good. And the chair, we're gonna set that same black color. So select the drop down menu, select black. Here, select black, and then the wheels. All right, can I select the wheels? There we go. Select the black color. Let's press Shift Z, make sure it looks good. Yes, it does. This shelf up here, we'll set it to the dark brown color. We'll set these to dark brown as well. We'll press Shift Z. All right, not too bad. This one we will set to the dark brown color, but we'll create a new material and we'll call it medium brown. All right, and then for the color, we'll just drag the value up so it's a little bit lighter. Not too much though, that looks like it's a little too much. So right there, and then we'll drag the saturation up. All right, for this lamp, we're going to be doing two materials. One is going to be the outside, and then one's going to be like the pole or whatever that part of the lamp is called. So we'll select new, we'll type in the word white, and we'll leave it at the diffuse white. Hit the plus sign and select the computer desk, which is the tan color. So type in the word tan and select it. Go into edit mode, right click on the outside edge, and then hit Control L. Select the tan material and assign. So now that outside has that tan material, perfect, which it does. All right. The icosphere decoration can have the white material, so we'll just type in the word white and select it. The keyboard and the computer desk will have a white material, but the screen will have a black material. So select the keyboard first, we'll type in the word gray, give it a new material. For the color, we'll just drag this down probably around that, about halfway or so. Then for the monitor, we'll type in the word white and select the white. Hit the plus sign and create a new material, and we're going to type in the word black glossy. Give it a principled shader, and then give it a clear coat of probably 0.5 or 0.6. We'll open up a preview, we can see what it looks like. And since this is a screen, I do want it to be a little bit glossy so it reflects the rest of the scene. And then for the color, just drag it down. There we go. Go into edit mode, make sure the screen is selected, and click assign. So now if we press Shift Z, we can see a reflection just like that. Not too bad. Pretty cool. The door, we're going to give it a white material, so type in white, select it. The door handle, same thing, type in white and select it. The trash can, we will give a black material, so type in the word black, or it's actually at the top right there, so select it. And then the pieces of paper, we can just select all of them and give it the white material. Hit Control L and go materials, and that will make sure all of them has that same white material. Let's press Shift Z, make sure everything looks good, and it does. Not too bad. Another thing that I want to add into our scene is a rug for the computer, because if you're on like a wood floor, the wheels could scratch it. So I'm going to press Shift A and add in a plane and then position it underneath the wheels. So go into front view, drag this down until it's underneath. We'll zoom in here. There we go. Make sure it's not underneath the floor though. Make sure it's a little bit above, and then drag it just over the desk. Go into edit mode. Make sure you're on edge select mode. We can right click on this edge, drag it this way, right click on that back edge and drag it this way till it's just a little, about like an inch or so from the wall. All right, drag this side till it's covering the desk, and then drag this side till it's covering the desk right there. For this material, we're gonna go with a light blue, so type in the word light blue, and this can be 2, light blue 2. Since we already created a light blue for the bed. And with this color, we're just going to go with a very light blue. Let's go a little darker actually, and a little less saturated. For some reason, the wheels right here on the computer desk didn't select that black color, so we'll just have to redo that. Select the wheels. All right, black. There we go. Now it's actually working. Okay, let's go into camera view, make sure it looks good, which it does. Now the materials for our outside right here, our walls and our floor. Before we do that, I want to go over to the modifier tab, click add modifier, and give it a solidify modifier. Because currently, if we zoom in on this and I turn off the solidify, you can see that it's paper thin, and that doesn't look too great. So I'm going to turn on a solidify modifier, and that will just help it look good. For the floor, we're going to go with a tan color. So we'll go use nodes. This will be the walls. We're going to go with a very, very light yellowish tan color, probably around there. Hit the plus sign, new, and we'll type in the word floor. And then for the color, we'll give it probably something like this. Go into edit mode, select the floor. Can I select the floor? Hold on. Okay, I thought Blender just crashed for a second. Select the floor and click assign. I'm also going to save my project because I haven't done that yet. I'm going to name this low poly interior tutorial. And I've already done a test run of this, so that's why there's 2 of them. I'm gonna hit the plus sign to give it tutorial 1 and save. All right, so now that we've saved, I don't have to worry about Blender crashing. Okay, so let's press Shift Z, make sure it looks good. The walls are a little bit too much of a tan color, so I'm just going to drag that up, and the saturation, just drag that down just a tiny bit. There we go, that looks a little bit better. Alright, so now let's work on the lighting. Now the sky, we're going to be using a sky texture, so click use nodes, set this to sky texture, and it should be pretty good at the default settings. We'll press Shift Z, not too bad. We're going to set the strength of this to 2. And I think, actually, let's go a little higher. Let's go with a value of 3 or 4. All right, let's go 3 actually, that's a little too bright. And then I'm going to be adding in a sun lamp. So right click on the lamp that's already in the scene, then go to the object data, set it to sun, use nodes, and set the color to a light yellow color, and then we'll rotate it in. I want to position it into the window right here, so I'll drag it down here, rotate it like this, go into top view, rotate it this way so it's going inside that window. Now if we go into camera view, we can see what it looks like. Not too bad. We're going to be setting the strength of this to a value of 2, so it just brightens up the scene a little bit. And I think we are good to go. The size we're going to drag down a little bit. We're going to go 0.08, so it just sharpens those shadows. All right. Next, go over to the render settings and come down here to the light paths. As you can see, once we render this, there's a lot of fireflies, so turn off reflective and refractive caustics, open up the sampling, and set the clamp indirect to 1. Now that we've done that, we can go over to the camera settings. Now here is where we make the scene really pop. Now we're going to set this to orthographic instead of perspective, and this does not look realistic, but low poly isn't realistic. It's a art style, so we're going to be setting the camera to orthographic, and as you can see already, it starts to look pretty cool. Position the camera right here, and if it's too zoom in, all you have to do is set the orthographic scale up or down. And right now mine is perfect, so we're going to leave it as it is. Next, I'm going to add another empty into our scene. So I'm going to place my cursor right on the computer, press Ctrl A, or Shift A I mean, mesh, or actually empty, and then plane axes. Press N, and I'm going to name this empty, we're going to name it focus, so we know what empty it is. Then N to close it off. Right click on the camera, and underneath the depth of field in the object data, we're going to type in the word focus, and we should see it pop up. Set the aperture to f-stop and give it a number of 1. And this will really give us some nice depth of field. That's too much, so let's go with 2. That still might be a little too much, so let's try 3.5. There we go, that's a little bit better. Alright, not too bad. Okay, we are almost done with our scene. I know it's a long tutorial, but we are almost done. The last thing that we'll be adding is a fan up top, a ceiling fan, and we're going to give it some motion blur. So to do this, we're going to press Shift A and add in a mesh and then cylinder. Scale the cylinder down and then place it in the middle of our scene, so right about here. Scale it down a little bit more and go into front view. Drag this up, scale it down even more, then press S, Z, and scale it. Make sure the top is right in line with the ceiling, so right there looks good. Then go into edit mode, Z for wireframe, and then right click on this face. I'm going to drag it up, E to extrude, then scale outwards, then E to extrude one more time to give it some thickness. Next, I'm going to Alt right click on that edge, go to select, checker, deselect. Next, press E to extrude, and if we just move our cursor, it should automatically go out. So position your mouse on the way, position your mouse how you think the ceiling fans would be, how long that would be, and I think that's probably good. Next, go into edge select mode and select each of these edges. So select that one, we'll select this one, and then finally the one over here. And then we'll just drag it upwards. There we go. Let's go into top view and make sure it looks pretty good. It might be a little big, so I'll scale it down. Next, we're going to give this a material, so go into edit mode, select the tan, or actually we'll select the dark brown color, hit the plus sign, and we'll select the white color. So type in the word white and select it. Currently everything is using the dark brown color, so I'm going to go into face select mode and Alt right click on this face, this one, this back one, and this one, and the one underneath, and then finally this one and that one. So only the fans have the dark brown material. Then I'll go to the material and assign that. Let's press Shift Z. There we go. Okay, to give our fan some motion blur, we need to animate it. So I'm going to hit the I key on frame 1 and go rotation. Next, I'm going to go to frame 20, rotate it just probably 150 or 170, then hit I and rotation. So over 20 frames, it'll rotate. Now the fastest point in the rotation is at frame 10. So we'll go to frame 10, go over to the render settings and turn on motion blur. Now currently, if we render this, we can't see what it looks like. So what we need to do is Shift B, draw box, then render just that. So Shift B, draw box on your fan and click render, and we can see how much motion blur it has. And it looks like it has a little bit, but I think I want to add a little bit more. So we open up the motion blur and we'll set the shutter amount to 0.7. I also think the camera does have a little bit too much depth of field, so I'll set the number right here to 4.3. Now if we render this one more time, we can see how our motion blur is working. There we go, and you can see it looks like it's moving. Alright, it's not too bad. So let's go back to the 3D view, Shift B to get rid of that box, and now we are ready to render. So I'm going to position my camera right in the center. So G, move it right here, perfect. Control S to save it. The resolution I'm going to turn all the way up, and I'm going to turn on denoising as well underneath the render layers panel. Now that we've done that, all we have to do is click render. The last thing that we're going to be doing in this tutorial is compositing our image. So here it is, here's our result, and it looks pretty good. There's lots of depth of field. The fan looks nice with the blur and everything. So now we're going to go over here and click on compositing. Select use nodes and backdrop, and then close off all of these panels since we're not going to need them. So close off that one, then drag this down to close it off. You can press N to close off the properties as well. To add in a viewer node, we're going to press Control Shift left click on the render layers, and we'll be able to see our results in real time. You can press V a couple of times to drag that render back. So the first thing that we're going to be adding is a color balance node. So click on color balance and place that right here. Then take the image and plug it into the composite. Now here we have three different values. The lift is the shadows, the gamma is the midtones, and then the gain is the highlights. Underneath the shadows, we're going to drag it up just a tiny bit. Actually, no, we're going to drag it down, and then the highlights, we're going to drag it up. The midtones, we're going to give this a nice warm red color, so probably pretty low. Right there, that might be a little too much, right about there. And this factor controls the overall strength of this color balance. So we could bring this down to 0.9 just to soften that up just a little bit, and that might look a little bit better. Next, press Shift A, we'll add in a brightness contrast node, plug it into the composite, and then underneath the brightness, we'll drag it up, and then the contrast up as well. To see it before and after, we can hold Control Shift left click, Control Shift left click, and go back and forth between these two. And there we go. So let's go back to the default settings, come down here and go to viewer node, and here is our result. So I know that was a long tutorial, but thank you for watching. If you create your own image, if you made it all the way to the end, congratulations, and I'd love to see what you create, so make sure to post it on Instagram or Twitter. For my final scene, I did add some more detail into it, like I added a bunch of books, I added a guitar in the corner, and a couple more things like a plant. So go ahead, go on your own, create what you want, add in as much detail as you want. Low poly scenes really are great for adding a lot of detail. It makes it look so much better. So go ahead and do that. Thanks again for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe for more tutorials, and I'll see you guys in the next one.